Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon is going to join me, and we're going to talk about lessons that we have learned from the past two draft classes. Bryce Simon and I have been podcasting now for 2 years together after Adam Spinella left us to go work for the Philadelphia 76ers. So Bryce and I wanted to talk through just some of the things that we've learned, some of the things we've kind of understood about the draft now working together, and just kind of talk through that. We'll talk about specific players. We'll talk about big ideas, kind of everything going on there. So with that, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? How are you? I started my real job back this week as a teacher here at the middle school. So we've been in school for a couple days here. You asked me how that was going beforehand. I actually despise the first week of school because it's just like, here are the rules and here are this. And we moved into a different building. So like there's all sorts of chaos and whatever. I don't want this to be mistaken. Like I love my job. I love my students. Once we get into the flow of things, I really enjoy it. I just kind of hate the first couple days as you're getting through all of the stuff to get to where, okay, now we can teach and learn and really get into things.
Yeah, I mean, look, as somebody that hasn't worked outside of my own house really for a decade now, it's so funny. I see all these things. I did work in an office for a minute there, but I'm just so gone from the real world of everything at this point. It's just the look, I'm on the phone all the time. I'm doing meetings all the time. I'm just so remote work coded and have been for a decade now that I can't even, kind of my wife comes home and talks about just, work things that she has going on, with inner office dynamics and stuff. And I'm just like, man, that's I don't know if I can experience it.
It is different. And I think that's why it's even harder of an adjustment for me now is because we podcast all summer. I have a different podcast with the Pistons one and all of that. And it's like, I get used to just working from home, anything I'm doing, work on the Substack, etc. And then everything's online. And then all of a sudden I go to a job where, yes, we use iPads, stuff's online, all of that, but it's very much, it's 20 kids in my face, in my room for 7 hours a day. And I had to explain this to my wife whenever I first became a teacher. I'm like, babe, I love you, but I've had to be in person with these kids for 7 straight hours. I need to get away from people for just a little while. And so now that's why I go on even today, I got home, I went on a walk for 20 minutes, and it just allows myself to decompress and get away from the world and all of that. And then podcast with my favorite person in Australia.
Yeah, I think I'm now at 7 straight days getting 10,000 steps. I feel good.
Nice.
I'm starting to move again, starting to be active again, which is good. Yeah, it's always nice this time of year. And then, part of the reason we're doing this is because I've really started to dig into 2026, right? For a project we have upcoming that we'll announce at a different time here. Not right now, obviously. I have been doing videos on 2026 players, right? And just been digging in. I did Darren Peterson pretty extensively yesterday and the day before because I forgot to turn on the microphone as I was talking into the microphone.
Sam, there's sometimes I finish a recording. I'm like, oh no, please. And every once in a while when I put it in iMovie, the audio takes a little while to show up. And I would be so sad if I did that. That would be so depressing.
Yeah. It was tough. It was 2 hours of recording, just completely dead. What can you do? But I'll just say this up front. I have Darren Peterson very clearly ahead of everybody in this class.
Okay. Nice.
The level to which he has leveled up as a passer, distributor, playmaker overall out of ball screens, I think is maybe not. I think it's maybe gone a little bit under the radar.
Sure.
Right now. He is very good in those respects now. He used to be more of a scorer. He is now like a all around creator in a really fun way. But let's talk about what we want to talk about here.
Yeah.
So my idea is, like I said in the intro, we've been doing this now for 2 years together, like almost on the dot, basically. So I thought a cool idea would be, okay, lessons that we've learned from the last 2 draft cycles, kind of talking through the draft, working together, things like that. And just in general from the drafts, it doesn't have to be like from working together. In fact, it won't be from working together for the most part. It will be just us kind of figuring out where we're going with this. And how did you go about this? I think that we went about this in totally different ways based off of how we talked like at the beginning here.
It was funny because as I was trying to decide, okay, how do I want to do this? I decided I was going to look at players that I was either too high or too low, or essentially that the NBA said I was different on in whatever capacity. And then I found commonalities. So some of them, it was a couple guys in the same draft. There's some that it was multiple guys between the 2 drafts. But I use individual players, I guess, to then come up with a theme of what was the theme with this? Why was I too high on both of these players or all 4 of these players, whatever, or too low, or, and as I was doing it, I was going, there's no effing way Sam's doing this the same way. Like, Sam is definitely doing it a complete opposite way. And that's what I love about this, Sam, is not only do I get to tell people that Sam lives in Australia and I live in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and we podcast together, but we also are just like, we go about things, even if we may end up in the same spot, we go about things such a different way in so many capacities.
I think we often don't, is the funny, like sometimes we do. Like, I think that, my ADHD addled brain, gets to things differently than most people, honestly. But I think that like our process in terms of like watching tape and digging into tape and everything, like that part is similar.
Yes, that is true.
It's more that like the big picture stuff. So like I went about this like big picture. Like, what am I thinking about the NBA right now? What am I thinking about when I talk to scouts? Like what are they saying to me? Like, what are our conversations like? Like, what are they asking me in terms of my process right now? Like, that's more where I kind of came at it. And I kind of thought you would go about it differently, which is why I thought this would just be good to not even give you a directive on this. Like, I was just like, literally just do your thing. I know that it'll be interesting when you do it. So I just want to start here with my first takeaway, right?
Yep.
My first takeaway from talking to teams around the league, talking to executives, GMs, scouts, everything like that. The draft matters more now than it has certainly within the decade prior. And I don't know about ever necessarily, but it certainly matters a lot more now because of the way that the aprons work and because of how the offseason has started to work and because of how extensions are operating now. So basically every player is extending is the reality, which means you want to get these players into your system as soon as you can. As soon as you can figure out, okay, do we have to go target them like in an early trade? Do we have to get them via the draft? The draft is the easiest place to get them. If you can get these guys that are going to be highly capable players before they, hit free agency, the problem is nobody's hitting free agency anymore, really. Like none of the big time difference makers, it feels like, are hitting free agency. So you have to draft them or you have to trade for them. And if you trade for them, you're giving up way more asset capital than you do if you just draft them. So I think that's the first piece of it. The second piece of it is that the aprons have created a circumstance where you essentially have like a salary cap where 90% of teams aren't willing to go over the second apron. So getting cost controlled players who can come in early and play like, for 2 or 3 years at a high level on a rookie scale deal, I think that is really, really important and is going to be an essential part of team building. And, Oklahoma City has figured this out better than anybody beforehand by accumulating draft picks, but also they continue to figure it out by not trading those draft picks away. Right. and they continue to accumulate more and more future draft capital. So I think that the NBA draft, not only is it like not decreasing in importance, it is increasing in importance. And on top of it, the final thing I will add here, I'm sorry, is that if you are going to trade for somebody like a Tyrese Halliburton, for instance, you're making sure that you rely upon the work you did on him pre-draft in terms of the intel, the work that you have done and continue to do with your pro scouting department, obviously, but a lot of it's going to come down to what you've done pre-draft and if you think this guy's going to be a star. So being able to target those players early via trade, I think is critical as well. And that goes back, in my opinion, and just knowing the way that NBA teams operate from having talked to them now for a decade, that relies a lot on intel that you gather in the pre-draft process. So to me, the NBA draft and the pre-draft process and scouting and evaluation, it is only continuing to grow in terms of importance, not drop.
Yeah, that's so I think of two things whenever, as you were talking through that, and it's things we've talked about. One in particular. So as you first were talking about it, where teams are able to re-sign their own guys, my first thought was, does that mean that guys don't have to be ready as early? Because the other thing that we often talk about in terms of the aprons is drafting guys that are going to be on cheap contracts that pay off on that rookie contract. Mm-hmm. So which way do you think that is leaning in terms of, because if guys are more likely to re-sign, maybe it's okay if they don't make it an impact for a first couple of years is what I was thinking and wanted to talk through with you. Or is it still no, we need them to hit on that rookie deal before they start to get expensive?
I think that the problem is with that, and it's something that I talk about a decent amount. The problem there is that there is so much talent continuing to enter the NBA just year after year after year, right? Like the 2026 draft is going to be, I think, pretty good. I want to see what the depth is going to be at the end of the day, but certainly at the top, it's much better than what we've seen in 2024. And I think I would argue that the top 5 will be better in 2026 than it was in 2025 as a whole. But there's just so much talent continuing to enter the league. There's so much talent that you can go and acquire overseas. Guys that are 29 years old that are just like ready-made, ready to go after having developed more and more of their game over in Europe, right? Like you can go and, find guys over there who can come over and play immediately. So I still think that because we're at a 30-team, structure of the NBA, that you do probably need to show something early on. Because otherwise, like, it's just hard to keep dead spots on the roster right now. Sure. Every team is so deep. Every team has so much talent, especially at the top, that it is just really, really hard, in my opinion, to be able to roster those guys for 3 years. Like, if they're not contributing after 3 years, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, and we've seen that, right? Like we saw Killian Hayes ended up getting moved. We've seen guys a year after they got drafted in the first round get moved. And so the other part of that I think is often forgotten is, whenever teams are doing their pre-draft and they're interviewing a guy that you're like, they have no chance of getting that guy in this draft. And it's like, well, it's not about this draft. And maybe sometimes it is, they're trying to decide if they want to move up or not. But it is about, quote unquote, the second draft for some of these guys. Or, Tyrese wasn't a second draft. It was just a really good young player that became available. And you want to have all of that information and intel that you would have if you were drafting him.
The perfect example of this is Aaron Nesmith to me.
Sure. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
The Pacers targeted Aaron Nesmith and first round pick in the Malcolm Brogdon deal, right? Or was it a second? I can't remember. But they targeted Aaron Nesmith to go get him from the Boston Celtics. They knew that he was a good bet for them and for what they wanted to do, which is huge. They don't make the finals without that deal, right? Yeah. The Pacers are the team I point to just because the Pacers, they trade they get Obi Toppin for a second round pick. You know what I mean? So, this is another great example.
Okay,
Portland interviewed Tumani Kamara.
So I'm glad Marcus brought this up, because I was going to ask you if you think that they, I'm not saying the deal would have been dead without Tumani, but I think a lot of times people think they lucked into Tumani in that deal. And I wonder how much they were like, no, we would really like Tumani as part of this bigger move.
Well, it's a combo of both. To me, it's more that they did their homework and that they knew what they wanted with Tumani. They know that was a guy that they wanted to target and they wanted to get within that deal. But also, like, what if the Phoenix Suns just say no? Is that going to break down the Damian Lillard deal? Probably. You know what I mean? Are you going to like hold up the entire deal over Tumani Kamara at that time, the 56th overall pick or whatever? Probably not. Or 52nd, I think he went. But you're probably not going to hold up that entire Damian Lillard deal where you're getting Drew Holiday and you're getting picks, and then, you're going to send Drew Holiday out somewhere else, for picks, right? So it's a combo of both. Like that's the thing about the NBA is, you have to be good and you have to evaluate well. And Portland, I think, did an amazing job of evaluating Tumani Kamara and targeting him in that trade. But also you have to be lucky that another team is willing to give up a guy in a deal like this. So it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, Halliburton would be the same way, right? Like if they wouldn't have ended up with Fox and felt like that they couldn't make those two work, then he never would have been available or not as available or whatever. So, but it is such a good point that this is why it's important to do your draft evaluations on every guy in every class, regardless of where your pick falls, or as much as you can.
Yep. Okay. Give me yours. Give me your first one here.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go in order of how I put these down. It's just no particular order. So my first one is how important processing is on both ends of the court, and that when a player shows you that I need to be careful about giving an excuse to context and situations in some of these. So my two names for this are Dalton Knecht and Tyler Smith. I was way higher than everybody else on Dalton Knecht, and I was pretty high on Tyler Smith. I would say up to this point, both of those players have not lived up to Knecht, probably even where he ended up being drafted, let alone where I had him, Sam. And Tyler Smith hasn't, in terms of where I had him, probably even not to where he was drafted. He was a second round pick, so people might argue that. But in my head, I justified some of their shortcomings based on their context and their path, and they were very different. But Dalton's, it was, hey, late bloomer, maybe didn't get a lot of defensive coaching at JUCO and then Northern Colorado, and even though he's already 24, I think he still has room to grow because of the context of his path. And with Tyler Smith, it was like, this Ignite program is a disaster, so I'm going to give him a pass on some of this stuff. So it was like, I think it's me having to do a better job of what is okay for me to quote unquote excuse, and what do I need to believe whenever a player shows me or does not show me.
Well, the Ignite program was hard because the Ignite program just was such a shit show that, we had no idea with these guys. Like, you could go the other way on that too with Ron Holland, who showed a ton of concerning defensive things on tape in terms of feel. And he's turned out to be great on defense. Right. So I'm almost willing to just throw the Ignite guys out in terms of, meaning anything long-term for where, how we go about developing guys, just because that context was a catastrophe and it is what it is. Sure. Right.
Yep.
But I think that your point on Knecht is a very valid one. I ended up with Knecht somewhere 9 to 12. I don't remember exactly where. He might have been, he was back half the lottery. Right. So I definitely had him ahead of guys I don't know. I had him ahead of Modest, I would bet, for sure. Almost certainly. And again, that is, that's one that is just stupid, obviously. Right. And I think I was higher on McCain than everybody. I had a late McCain lottery grade. I had him quite high when everyone thought he was going to go more 15 to 25. And I still had him ahead of McCain. And it's just well, okay, they're both shooters, but Jared really knows how to play and can dribble and can actually do things. And I think I relied too much on the size idea there.
Yep.
yeah, like I don't like. Would you? I don't think that the Lakers would get a first round pick for Connect if they moved him right now.
No,
Would be my guess.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, like based off of talking to teams, like I just don't think that's the reality. Like I think that they would get seconds. I think somebody would be willing to take a shot, but yeah, I don't see that out there on the market right now. So I don't know. It's a tricky process there.
Yeah, it was just more so like I think I got blinders on a little bit in terms of defending him with like the defense and some of the other processing stuff because I could talk myself into why it hadn't developed it the way you would want for a guy that was his 5th year in college and he had always shown improvement. And at the end of the day, like he was putting up silly numbers on the offensive end in the SEC. It was just like, I think I will try to be more cautious of some of those things. In terms of if I'm having to consistently defend it and make quote unquote, again, excuses for it, maybe I should dive into it a little bit more as well.
So Long Live Organic asks, some guys improve their processing, but where does it come from? Is it coaching or personal IQ? So what I would say is that every player improves how they process the game. Like by going to the NBA, becoming a professional, like only focusing on this, every player gets better at processing basketball for the most part. Like, look, there are exceptions to this, right? Sure. But like, I would even argue like Bol has gotten better with his processing. The issue is that are you developing your processing at a rate fast enough to where you're keeping up, right? And elevating beyond. And that's where, to me, age really matters. Like, are you 22 and kind of a poor processor? Or are you 18, 19, 20 and you're younger and you're still trying to figure things out a little bit? Maybe you're not in a great collegiate situation. Maybe you're in a very narrow role in your collegiate situation, right? And you just haven't gotten a chance to show, no, like I can think the game. I can make quick decisions, right? There are different things. You know, I haven't really answered this question, obviously, but I think it's a mix of coaching, being smart enough to like think about things, like having the intelligence, having enough like experience. I often think that I think it's hard to make up the experience gap. Like guys that start later in basketball, I tend to be like a little bit more wary of those guys being able to like make up that gap in terms of just guys that have been playing for their entire fucking lives. Like they have a natural inherent understanding of basketball. And this is totally like a chicken and an egg problem where I will talk to people on the NBA side and they will disagree with me on this. Like totally. I'll talk to other people on the NBA side and they're with me on this. Like this is an art. This is not a science. Like every player is entirely different. And you really have to feel if it's a player that is coming from not having played, not having gotten a lot of experience. Like Common Malawatch this year is like a really good example, right? Common Malawatch does some things on the court that kind of drive you crazy. And you can just see like from the way that he rebounds the basketball, like his natural feel isn't quite there yet. But Common Malawatch is a kid that like is an awesome human being. And anybody that you talk to says like very intelligent, understands like where he has like very self-aware, understands his shortcomings and like will work at it, right? So, but is he going to be able to make up that gap in terms of that deficiency? I don't know. Like it's on him to figure that out, right? So, you know, the other thing that I'll bring up with this as well is I kind of think that we're entering an era a little bit of there are guys that are high level prospects that are just unbelievable, right? And they exceed everything. Like Anthony Edwards was a, you know, top 2 guy, 5-star prospect, all that stuff in his class from the time he was like a sophomore onward, right? But a lot of the stars league wide right now tend not to come from that background by and large. Like Giannis, Nikola Jokic, Doncic was obviously like a prodigy. Like it's another, example of just being unbelievable. But like you look at the NBA All-Star game in 2025, right? Like Tyrese Halliburton was not that, right? Uh, Jalen Brunson, I would argue, 4-year college player, like really had to fight for everything he has, like athletically. Donovan Mitchell was not that. He was like a top 50 recruit. He was not a, top 3, top 4 guy. Tatum was like a top 3, top 4 guy. Towns was like a top 3, top 4 guy. But like Garland was like way undersized when he was young. And then eventually, like by the time he was a senior, emerged into this, like being like a 5-star kid. Hero was not a 5-star kid coming out. Damian Lillard obviously went to Weber State. Mobley was a guy that was a 5-star. Siakam, definitely not this. Jalen Williams at Oklahoma City, like definitely not this kind of guy. I think that, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, obviously the MVP this year, like not this kind of guy. I think that the way that guys develop and the way that the arc of their careers goes kind of matters now, in part because these players like are just given everything early on. And I think some of them, this is so, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. Like some of them stop working. It's kind of the thing, because we do have like a real, like there's real money that comes with being the number 1 overall guy now. Like, all due respect to AJ Debinsa, like AJ Debinsa stagnated this year. It's on him to reverse that trend. And guys can do that too, right? Like I would argue Cade Cunningham kind of stagnated for a year and then figured it out, right? Like he continued to get better and continued to grow and become a better basketball player. Jaylen Brown, I thought like kind of stagnated and then got better. So just because somebody has a stagnant year, it doesn't mean that, they're going to stop getting better. But the biggest thing, and this is like my takeaway, number 2 really, is that I want guys that are just like crazy competitors and crazy workers above all. And that's where like the intel comes in. Like you have to dig deep into the intel on all these guys and like really know who's going to work, who's not going to work. Like Jared McCain is like a crazy worker. That's why I'm like willing to bet on him at the end of the day, because that dude is never going to stop working to maximize what he can be. You have got to be an absolute savage as a worker in order to make this, in order to hit like a real ceiling. If you are not, other guys are going to get better at a rate that eclipses your rate. You cannot not be a savage.
Yeah, it's as I've got in this world a little bit more, you realize some of the ones that take it serious to different levels. And whether it's the on-court stuff, the film work, all of that. And back to the question real quick, the things I want to, and you touched on too, was maturity. I think physical tools also, like when we talk about, I realize processing is a mental thing. But in my career, I got to a point in a level where my processing was there. My physical tools did not allow it to show at the level of what people might think. Like I saw things happen, but physically my muscle twitch wasn't fast enough to get the ball in and out of my hands or whatever. Like, so that's another, and then application is another huge aspect of it as well. Different player, you can show this 2 different players the same film session or whatever, and the one that can go apply what you showed him after the first time
Totally
is going to be completely, and that's a real thing. Some guys aren't able to do that. It doesn't click to the 5th film session or maybe the 10th, or maybe they didn't have the maturity to wait until the 5th film session and they just gave up on it. But back to your second point, it is interesting as you get into this more and more to realize the different levels of the kind of determination is not the right word, dedication, kind of the addiction to the work, whatever I'm still not using the right word, but you know what I mean? Like
I think addiction to the work is right. Like, honestly, like think about like even me, like not, physically, obviously not there, but like I've gotten way better at this in the last 2 years because like I'm addicted to the work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I really enjoy it. And like I get twitchy when I'm away from it. You know what I mean? I don't like being away from it.
It's funny you say that, because sometimes I get I get a little testy when you see on like Twitter people telling people like, take time off, like, it's whatever. Why you diving into the 2026 draft? Like, go. It's like, no, like, I literally love this.
Yeah.
Like maybe my life is a little unbalanced, but in general, I do my family time. I do what, but like Sam, there's been days the last couple of weeks since summer league's over where I'm just like, what can I break down? Like, what film can I go do? Like, where Javonte Green got signed? Perfect. I can dive into Javonte Green film for my Substack on the Pistons, and you're right, because it's that same type of just like determine the addiction, like to the work that I think some of these NBA players have and some don't. The obsession they have to what they're doing. And yeah, maybe it can be unhealthy in general, but some of them have it, and you see it, pay off with the arc of their careers.
Yeah, and I'll just point this out too. Long live organic. This is all really good stuff from him here. Sometimes if you're too reliant on physical tools during development, it equals a regression in processing because you haven't had to problem solve.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if you haven't had to try to learn the skills when your brain is still developing of how to problem solve on the court, because you can just drive every time and score. Like, this is why, like, Anthony Edwards is just like the top 1% of everybody. So it doesn't matter. He's just going to be able to get to his spots even in the NBA. But you have to be the top 1% of literally everybody in the NBA to be able to make that work. Otherwise, you have to problem solve. And if you haven't gotten a chance to develop that part of your brain that allows you to problem solve, I think that ends up being kind of a deficiency later on as you go through your career.
I'll use it like Asar Thompson is an example for me. I just did a breakdown for him recently, and his non-dunk finishing numbers at the rim were not good via synergy. And I wonder if part of it is because throughout a large portion of his life, his career so far, he's been so much more athletic than everybody else.
Yeah.
The finishing has been quote unquote easy. And now even though you're a top 2 or 3% athlete in the NBA, you still meet Rudy Gobert at the rim. You still meet Draymond Green at the rim. You still meet Evan Mobley at the rim. And you're not just going to jump over those guys and dunk. And so now you have to figure out taking the contact, manipulating the ball, shot faking, playing off 2 feet. And this isn't a knock on Asar. I think he's going to grow and get there. But it's the same idea of, and like you said, the commenter has done a great job of sometimes those physical tools allow you to not have to develop, and it's no fault of the player, but not have to develop some of these other nuanced aspects of your game.
All right. You go. I just kind of gave one in terms of wanting psychos. You can give me another one.
Yeah, so this one is like more of a question, and I'm hoping maybe you'll have an answer as we go through it. So the 4 names that stood out to me with what I'm going to go here is Kyle Filipowski, Isaiah Collier, Justin Edwards, Liam McNeely. I felt like those were all guys who varying degrees of rankings, but all fairly high. I mean, Liam was probably the lowest in his high school class, but what I would consider bigger names who I guess underwhelmed, Filipowski not as much, but who I think now look like they all dropped too far. Like Flip and Collier went way lower than that were on my board, and I think on your board as well. Edwards was an undrafted free agent who I had in my 30s, who looks like he's at least going to carve out a role. McNeely ended up into the first round, so still in the first round, not as much of a drop. But I just, those were the ones is like, is there a lesson here? Or is like, are these potentially lessons for NBA teams to not over-index something? But I couldn't figure out the something, Sam.
Well, I think that it's really interesting with that group of players because they're all quite different. So
that's what was hard. Yeah.
This is where you kind of dig into, okay, what is the context around the player and why were they so much worse in college than they were in high school?
Yeah.
So let's talk Justin Edwards, right?
Okay.
Like,
Yes.
I had Justin Edwards very low. Like I had him like deep in the 50s, and he goes undrafted and everything, right? So I think that the reason that I ended up with Justin too low, frankly, it looks like he's going to be a solid NBA player, is that I thought he couldn't dribble. Was just like straight up. Like I thought he couldn't play with his right hand. I thought that the way that the season seemed to get to him throughout the year, like he got worse like throughout portions of the year. I thought like he really didn't play a whole lot. Well, he played, but like continued to actually receive like less usage throughout the course of the year because they kind of figured out like can't really do this, right? And part of this could be like he was just worse than Reed and Rob and those guys, but and like decided to give them the ball. But I think that what we didn't understand maybe is how messy that Kentucky situation was, where like internally Rob and Reed were expected to be like the fourth and fifth guys of that recruiting class, and they immediately stepped up and were the top two guys in that recruiting class. And then, okay, like what the fuck does that mean for the team, right? Like how do we go about that? Like how do we handle role allocation? How do we handle the way that looks, right? And look, this Kentucky team, if I remember correctly, like they were still a 3 seed in the tournament. And they were still, they get upset by that Oakland team, but like people were more excited about, other guys like Aaron Bradshaw was in that class, right? Like obviously Justin was in that class. DJ Wagner was in that class. Like those guys, like the 3 top 10 guys in that class to varying degrees were not very good at Kentucky. And then Dillingham and Reed come in and they're great and they both go in the top 8. Well, like, does that, how big of an adjustment is that in season from what the role was expected to be? How does everyone adjust to that? How do you go about trying to fix the role allocation? How do you keep everybody engaged in that, right? Like how does somebody react mentally to that? And you really have to dig into the intel. Filipowski's like a whole intel conversation where I think people just got that kid wrong at the end of the day. And I ended up with him in the top 20 because I did the intel research and like kind of understood, like, it's not that, there was the whole Mormon girlfriend thing. Most teams I talked to didn't really care about that. But there were some team dynamics there that kind of came up for sure. And you just had to like kind of understand what it was. But everything I got told was worker goes in, does his work, goes home, and, he's with his girlfriend all the time. And like, that's fine. Right. But like he always goes in and does his work. Right. The other guys you mentioned, like Liam's another context example where they just like had to put him into an entirely different role that he had never really played before. Like he had to be the primary creator on a fucking Big East team, like to start his career when he was expected, at Montverde, he played next to freaking Derek Queen and Cooper Flagg and Rob Wright and like had all these distributing guards who could help him like get shots. And okay, I think that it kind of helped him develop the ball skills a little bit, but I think like a lot of people kind of forgot, no, like he's a shooter. And the big question for Liam is like, is he a real shooter? Like, is he a 40% guy or is he like a 37% guy? Because that'll be the key difference between him being like a long-term NBA player and not. But again, with Liam, when you do the intel, he's a psychotic worker. Like he's maniacal in terms of his approach to the game, genuinely wants to be great. Like, Connecticut, like God, like those guys rave about Liam's approach and about the way that he goes about it. So that's why I still ended up like, Liam right around 20 as well. Just because I was like, okay, like at the very least, I feel like he's a rotation guy because he's going to work his balls off the stick.
And then Collier was the other one. So like, is that a USC context, you think? Or just like, because I guess my wonder was like, was it guys that were ranked so high and then maybe they dropped because they didn't meet our expectations or whatever? Because like even Liam's was, well, he's supposed to be a shooter and then he only shot 33%. So I think a lot of people just looked at the box score 3-point percentage and like, well, this shooter didn't shoot it as well as what he's supposed to. And I wonder if that's with Collier as well, where like he was supposed to be a top 5, didn't play that way, and then we dropped him way too far.
Well, let's transition into my next one, right? Because I think it speaks more to Collier than anything else. So the lesson from that one is just like context matters on these guys that are top 5 recruits, even let alone the guys that are lower than that. But with Collier, my takeaway is like you either need to love small on ball players or you rank them low.
Yep.
Is kind of the reality, right? And I did that this year, and it, got me an immense amount of shit from people, frankly, and that's fine. Like, I don't really care. But Rob Dillingham was a guy like I was not super high on, and ended up with him at like 15, 16, 17, something like that. And people were like, what are you doing? Like, he's going to go in the top 10. And I was like, yeah, I don't really care. Like, I don't see it in terms of him being able to be, a primary starting guard realistically. And if you're going to take somebody in the lottery, that's what you want that player to be. So I think with Collier, to me, and I still have Collier at like 20, 21, 22 or something, the lesson is if you have a small guard who is an on ball, like savage, cool, like you can draft him high and you can think he's going to be great. But if you have questions about him and you think he's like on that borderline of like starter versus bench player, or if you think that like he probably can't be a starter on a great team, to me that guy's like in the 20s now. Like I'm pretty good with kind of diminishing those players and not having a whole lot of interest in drafting them, because like you got to be fucking elite to be able to make that work.
Well, I even wonder if that's still too high, Sam, because one of mine was the group of Tyler Kolek, Cam Jones, Jamal Shed, who, like, I think I had Kolek in the first round. I had Cam close, Shed, but like those guys, Shed has been really good. We'll see if Kolek, what he does this next
Kolek's
year.
Flashed.
Yeah. But it's like, those guys couldn't even get into the end of the first round. You know what I mean? Like those guys all ended up second round guys. And so like that was one of mine, is like, to your point, if I don't like them enough to have them lottery, maybe I just, they need to be in the second round, because it seems like that's where they went.
Like Sharif Cooper, I remember that hype train for a while, and it was like, well, guys, like he can't. Like what about this is going to work in the NBA? You know what I mean? Like the ball screen stuff will work in the NBA, but what does he do once he gets separation? Right. So, and then on top of it, and this is the big thing, like these small guards, like Isaiah Collier's slightly different. And it's why I was a little bit higher on Collier and still ended up with him like in the 20s, because he's big and physical and strong and can like definitely guard up the lineup a little bit, because he's like 215 pounds or whatever. I don't know if that's the weight. He looks like he's 215 pounds.
Yeah.
He's big dude, and he's strong, and he's long, and he's like burly and powerful, right? Those guys can guard up the lineup a little bit. But defensive small guards, like they tend to get targeted in a real way, because you can just switch. Like you can get those guys on switches, because most guys are going to have to, at the end of the day, most teams are going to switch like 1 through 3, 1 through 4, and you're going to be able to find a mismatch there. And like those guys create real defensive deficiencies. Like I've talked about this on the show before. Like I'm somewhat worried about like if Darius Garland is good enough, to be able to like win a title with. Darius Garland's a fucking unbelievable player. He's one of the 30 best players in the league, 35. I don't know what the number is, right? But like he's a genuinely unbelievable basketball player. But there are real matchup-based deficiencies that he will create for you that you have to problem solve on your end if you have him on your team. And I think in Garland's case, like the juice probably is worth the squeeze because he's so good offensively. But I'm not like 1,000% sure of that yet.
Yeah.
And think about how good Darius Garland is, Bryce. Like that guy's unbelievable at basketball. He's unbelievably good.
And we know he's unbelievably good, right? Like that's what the point here is. We know what he is capable of and what he is able to do. And it's still like, I don't know. So then whenever you're having to draft one that you're not even guaranteed comes close to that level of offensive player, it gets really scary.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, my big takeaway is like, if it's a smaller guard, like I loved reading that class and like I'll still go to bat for Reed a little bit, but like you got to be fucking great. Like
Yeah.
you gotta have shooting. You got to be able to pass. You got to be able to play in ball screens. You got to like have some defensive tools that you can fall back on. And again, like Garland has all this, which is why, again, I had Garland like in the top 5 or 6 of that class because he can do this stuff. But I bring up Garland just because, the Cavs are going through it right now, trying to figure out how to build a title team. And they're contending and they're a 60-win team and they're this unbelievable roster of talent. And Garland is definitely a piece of that and is enormous for their offensive creation. He helps them play up tempo. Like, again, I think the juice is worth the squeeze probably with Garland, but like that's the borderline. That's basically how good you have to be.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to be like a small guard, and that's just an incredibly high standard to hit.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. My next one is I had this came to mind as I was looking at Alex Sarr, who I loved, right? And
Yeah,
so we're talking about the top of the draft, I think is where we probably need to stay with this one. But I find myself being really nervous about how wrong I could end up being because he doesn't even have, like, he hasn't shown the foundational skills of a big. And so he's so reliant on doing the other things that I got excited about. And so I guess my question is, or where my mind went here, Sam, are there other archetypes we could apply that to? So with Sarr, it's the theoretical stretch big rim protector, right? But if not proven, because it was theoretical, he hasn't shown it to be practical yet, but doesn't offer the true big man things to fall back on. So if the skill level things offensively don't show up, you're in real trouble in terms of high-end talent. So I wonder, I found myself going, is there other archetypes that I need to watch out for? The next big man that shows up in this ilk, I will remind myself of this. I wonder, is there a wing? Is there a on-ball guard? Is there another archetype that I need to be careful? Like maybe there's a scoring guard that I need to archetype that I need to be careful of. That's like, hey, if this doesn't hit its ceiling and they don't have these other skills to fall back on, this is like out of the league type of potential or something.
Okay. So this is one of my takeaways as well. And, with Sarr particularly, but we can talk about other archetypes in a second, but we'll stop on Sarr because you kind of focused on him there for a second.
Yeah.
So one of my big takeaways, and just in terms of how I evaluate, right, is I care way more about bigs doing the essentials in the non-negotiables at an elite level, or like at a level that is good enough to stick. And then you can build off of that, which is almost an antithesis on some level to like another thing that I just truly believe in my core is you have to have a 5 outlook to win at the highest levels, right? So you have to have both, which is complicated, I think. But I think that the key thing that you have to fall back on at all times is that NBA coaches aren't going to give a shit about the other stuff if you don't do the non-negotiables. And the non-negotiables to me are, rim protection, post defense, rebounding, finishing at the rim, rim running, all of that stuff. And I would say that Sarr is quite below average. So I did a redraft today of 2024, right? That went up at The Athletic, and I've been saying it's happening for like a week now. It finally went up today. I had Sarr at 1 pre-draft. I would not have ranked him 1 based off of how I look at the game now, in part because of him, versus how I looked at it even a year ago. And I ranked Sarr at 11 on this redraft because I was like, okay, he does all of the things that I look for in terms of perimeter play, potential switchability, but like potential switchability. He's not like wildly switchable yet. Short roll passing, potential to shoot it. Again, not really a shooter yet, but like could shoot it at some point. He has all of those tools and could develop all of those things within the next 2 or 3 years. But he is coming from such a deficit in terms of the non-negotiables.
Yeah.
And the non-negotiables are rebounding, finishing at the rim, screening, post defense, everything like that. He's a good like rotational, come from the weak side, protect the rim. Like he'll go get a shot and block a shot. But like I wouldn't say he's like a great rim protector right now, to be honest. Maybe not as good as what people hope for, right? He's the worst like finisher in the league among bigs other than Andre Drummond. And statistically, that is accurate. Alex Sarr this year made 45.1% of his layups in half-court settings. He is 7 foot tall. He made 45.1% of his layups this year. That is like impossibly bad.
Yeah.
And only made 55.4% of his shots at the basket in total, which was second worst in the league among centers, who took at least 150 shots at the rim in front of only Andre Drummond. We know how bad Drummond is, but Drummond also will get a lot of his own rebounds, right? Yeah. So it's like a little bit different. Like he's just like kind of tapping the ball to himself a decent amount of the time. So that to me is like kind of a non-negotiable because he can't pressure the rim in a way that NBA teams need their bigs to be able to pressure the rim on some level. Like he's not a good screener right now. He's good at kind of slipping into that short roll area and then making quick decisions, but he is not really great at being able to like actually make contact on screens and get his guards any sort of separation. Like rebounding wise, like I just don't think the hands are amazing. Like I think that they got better. Like he has very weird hands. Like I think that you will see him like catch below his waist on like pocket passes from time to time, and you'll be like, oh, there's some of this stuff that like really works. And then you will see other times where like he goes up for a rebound, and like I feel like he's good when he's not contested. Sure. Like if it's a short roll where he has some time to like gather the ball, he will catch below his waist and it's like pretty good. But then going up, maybe it's like a wrist strength thing or like a hand strength thing or something like that, where he struggles to like go up and get contested rebounds and like bring it down. Like I feel like he doesn't get contested rebounds all that well. And that's a huge problem as a defensive rebounder. You got to end possessions as a big. So I don't want, like, I'm not like saying that like he's done and like has no chance to stick. Like he's going to be an NBA player for sure, I think.
Yep.
But like he's almost a 4 more than a 5, but he's not good enough as a shooter or ball handler to really be like a perimeter based 4. Like he doesn't like run off of screens like Jaren Jackson and like drill threes to be able to play like 4-out offense around a big 5. So what do you kind of do with that player is like a tricky piece of it to me. And like, I feel like I'm shitting on Alex Sarr when the reality is that he also can run the court at an incredible level. The passing ability like really stood out this year. It was a huge area of growth, and his, ability to potentially switch down the road and play varied defensive coverages. And maybe he develops into a shooter. All of these things could happen, but he's coming from such a low point with the non-negotiables that I worry about him being able to like be an impactful player on a winning team, I guess is where I'm at.
Yeah. Listen, he was like one of my favorite players from the very start with all the flashes. And I think everything you say is fair. I know it probably comes off overly negative. I don't think it meant to, but it's just like, I think I bought into the theoretical version of Alex Sarr and lost sight of, hey, if this doesn't hit, what's left to at least keep him? And I'm with you. Like, I don't think he's like going to fall out of the league, but what's left here to keep him in the starting lineup, right? Like, okay, he's not the unicorn of Miles Turner, Kristaps Porzingis, that ilk, right? Well, what keeps him as a starting center? Screening, finishing lobs, offensive rebounding, defensive rebounding, all the things you talked about. And I missed that part of it, that's not there. And if he doesn't have that, then he's like an inefficient version of the skilled stretch big, which now is coming off the bench, or, maybe your third, change up big or something like that. And he still has a long way to go and to improve and all of that. It's just, it's one thing that I will try to keep in context and keep in mind moving forward with that archetype of big.
Yep. Completely agree. Completely agree. I mean, like any other guys like this, the difference between him and Chet, like people will ask about Chet, he's so skinny, right? Like Chet has always rebounded the ball at a super high level. He has always been an unbelievable primary rim protector in drop coverage. He's always been, he always has done the non-negotiables and then also added the non-essentials, right? Added the things that you can do at an elite level that make you like truly special, right? So even though they're both skinny and they're both weird, yeah, like I think that Chet does the non-negotiables, whereas Alex does not. And it's why Chet was, my number one prospect that year. I fucking love the guy. It is what it is. But yeah, it's interesting to me. I think that that's something I have to focus on more is, do you do the non-negotiables? And honestly, like Kalel Ware, right, is an interesting example of this. Ware like did rebound the ball is kind of a thing. Like he has always been like a really good go up and get the ball rebounder. Like he actually weirdly does like a little bit more of the non-negotiables than Sar does. And for what it's worth, like I'll say this now and people will scoff at it or whatever. Sar was like a little bit more polarizing pre-draft than what people think. I really liked him and I was high on him and like I would go to bat for him with scouts, and I wouldn't do that now because I just think differently. I think he's going to be an NBA player, but like, it is what it is. There were teams that like had him at like 10, 12 on their board. Like he was not a universal, this is a no-brainer guy pre-draft even, which is unsurprising in that class where everybody was so, varied in terms of their evaluations on players. But yeah, like that's a real thing. I would say like he was even then somewhat polarizing.
Yeah. So my next one then would be Zach Edey and Khalil Ware were my examples here, or the ones that made me think of it. But like team fit matters, and it is an important part of the equation. Where I think this is for me in general, kind of just like my draft philosophy, and then something I need to get better at in terms of if I think this matters, then whenever we start doing mock drafts with teams and all of that throughout the year, I have to start doing a better job of actually pairing players up with teams. Now, I still like believe in the tier system and all of that, but I actually kind of took this more from the conversations we had about like the Pacers and the Thunder in terms of during the finals and how they built their teams out and from the top down and throughout the whole organization. And if you have a coach you really trust and is going to be there and you have a system, there are players that may just not work in your system. They may just like not fit your system whatsoever. And regardless of how talented they are, it's never going to work for you. And so that's like, I bring up Edey and Ware because like Edey just makes so much sense next to a Jaren Jackson Jr. So for other teams, I wouldn't have taken Zach Edey in the top 10. I think Khalil Ware made sense in Miami because I know people hate this, they do have a certain culture that seems like it brings out the best in players who maybe had some questions around motor or whatever you want to call it, like Khalil Ware had, and maybe are a little have a certain ability and a head coach and all of that is able to get rid of those or improve those type of things. And so whether it's system or something like that, I think I want to try to do a better job of, if the Pacers are on the clock at 15, who is the player that fits their system the best? Now, some of these teams are hard, right? Because coaches are consistently changing and all of that. But some of these teams, they have told us what they value. and what their organization is, and finding players that fit right into that.
1,000%. You know, part of the reason that teams' boards look so disparate and different is that there are teams who think that certain players just don't fit into their schemes, right? I'm trying to think of an example of this, maybe from 2024 or 2025, right? Like, if you have a guard that's like a questionable shooter, maybe you can't take a flyer on Devin Carter's shooting coming around at some point, right? Like you would love to bet on the kid, and you'd love to bet on like his work ethic and the fact that he is another like insatiable worker, somebody who really is about doing the right things and like caring about the right things. But if you just have a non-shooter, you might not be able to bet on that. Right. This is why like the job I do whenever I rank prospects, right, is like kind of stupid, and why I've always wanted to do like team-based big boards and just frankly don't have time to do 30 team-based big boards. And I've done the project before, but like every team's roster, every team's scheme, like if there's a movement shooter out there and you're a team that runs like, high ball screen offense where it's like well spaced and 5 out and you just are relocating around the perimeter, right? Like there's not really a reason to draft like a movement shooter type then, because you're not going to get the best out of that player. And if he's like a little bit of defensive liability, those weaknesses are going to be exacerbated within your scheme. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's tricky.
Yeah, no, that's what, and it would just, I talk about like a walk it up, a point guard that wants to play slow, like doesn't fit a fast paced team. You just mentioned like the ball screen thing. I was kind of looking through here as well, trying to come up like does Sorber or Beringer fit better with the Thunder?
Sorber,
I
think, because they want to run, they want to run stuff with their bigs. They want to run DHOs. They want to run, Beringer might be able to do that at some point, but we don't know that.
So like I bring up those two because they're very close on my board and got drafted very close to each other in the actual draft. And so like even if you're someone like, hey, Beringer's ceiling is higher, even if you're like dead set that he's going to be a better player than Sorber, like Oklahoma City probably looked at it and just like Sorber fits the style of play and our style of bigs maybe better than Beringer. And so it's just something because I think when I first started doing this, and I think a little of this was like very Piston centric. A lot of my early NBA thoughts and NBA draft thoughts was just from Detroit. And whenever they like drafted like back-to-back guards and all of these non-shooters, but then a lot of times the argument was like best player available. Like they're not good enough to worry about anything else. And some of that is true. Like, you can surround that with veteran presence, but there is a little bit of like, what is your identity? Draft players to fit that identity.
Yeah, I mean, agree. Like it's all about finding guys who fit what you want to build. If you're built, and seriously, like a lot of this comes off the court too. Like if you care about off court and you want good dudes and you want high IQ basketball players and like you're building around a culture like that, particularly, you got to find the right players. You know what I mean? You got to find the right guys that fit with what you're trying to accomplish.
Yep.
I think I had like 2 in a row there, Bryce. Like, give me another one for you.
So this one, I didn't have a takeaway. I am just curious, like what we can. Jalen Wells and AJ Mitchell are the biggest names here. You would probably want to add Cam Spencer to that as well. But like, what did I miss? Like I find myself going, what did I miss with Jalen Wells?
Sure.
What did I miss with AJ Mitchell? My question to myself was, were these older players who I didn't see the upside, but missed on the translatable rotational skills and value?
So yeah, I've thought about this a lot in the last like 2 or 3 days since I've written the redraft, particularly in regard to Keyshawn George and Jalen Wells.
Yeah.
Because those were 2 guys that I didn't really love pre-draft, right? I had Keyshawn like 40 or so, if I remember correctly. Let me pull it up just so I get this right.
I had him 32, so this is a good name for me as well. I was not quite as low, but still a little bit lower than 24.
So I Keyshawn George at 35.
Yeah.
And in the redraft I had him at 12.
Yeah.
So like I really kind of like where Keyshawn is headed right now. And I had Jalen Wells at 50, right? So I think that what I missed there, and I went back and like watched some tape to confirm my scout and like make sure I'm thinking about this. I don't know that I missed this. It's just that they were not good on defense. Like that's the thing. Those guys like have kind of made their bones on defense, and maybe this is something we should talk about. They've made their bones on defense early in their career in the NBA. Like Jalen Wells was freaking awesome on defense last year and really worked his balls off and like fought and scratched and clawed and was awesome this year on defense. You know, in terms of the defense in the draft guide I wrote, Wells' issues come on defense where he struggled this season. The good news is I think he wants to defend and was solid at sliding with his man in a straight line. However, you can really feel his lack of length out there. He doesn't get up to contest shots or disrupt jumpers, didn't disrupt opposing players' handles. He was okay at navigating screens and getting skinny over the top, but didn't really handle multiple actions well. He wasn't always aware of where screens were coming from. He was also too handsy on the ball. Off the ball, he was inconsistent when Washington State played man-to-man. I thought he tended to overplay situations, would get stuck watching the ball and making him susceptible to getting cut and back cut. Lack of length meant that he didn't cover as much ground as what I wanted to see. Balanced on closeouts, but requires an extra step to get all the way out because of that lack of length. Not really a playmaker who got into passing lanes or block shots, really. But I thought he was better in zone when he had just had areas where he could play and react. So, like, talking about, I note in that scouting report that there are positive aspects of his defensive tape where you can see the flashes that he wants to defend and that his closeouts are on balance. And he is somebody who like will stay in front of somebody in a one-on-one setting, right? But then like, do you just remove all the negatives? That's what's really tricky about him, particularly. Yeah. And then Keyshawn George, like I'll just scroll up to Keyshawn George and where I was at on him defensively. Just looking, George flashed high-level playmaking instincts on defense that should give evaluators hope for his long-term development on that end. He's not elite or close to it, but was generally useful for Miami. Knows how to use his length to impact plays, has great hand-eye coordination, and is adept at getting into passing lanes for deflections. That's something that like really stood out this year for Washington. Very good at using his length to dig into ball handlers. Feet are semi-fluid and generally slides with his man. Comfortable crawling into the opposition space. Miami gave up 105 per 100 possessions when he was on the court versus 115.1 when he was off the court. But then also had like really bad habits. Didn't receive any tough defensive assignments and really got cooked when he did get tough defensive assignments. Footwork was out of place often. Didn't think his hips were like super fluid, thought the lack of strength really showed up. So like with Wells and George, it's almost two different things, right? Like with Wells, like with both of them, you could see the vision, frankly. With Wells, it was like, okay, there aren't a ton of physical tools here. And how is that going to go in the NBA?
Yeah.
And Wells just like maximized it because he's another kid that's like an insatiable worker and really goes incredibly hard at it and tries to figure it out and problem solves, right? Keyshawn did have like the real physical tools and he got stronger. Like he got stronger way quicker than what I think I expected physically, right? Especially given that he was a little bit older in his draft class. So to me, what I think I missed on was just focusing on the negatives of their defense and not envisioning the potential for growth that those guys showed in certain areas on the defensive end that showed like, no, like they might actually be okay on that end.
Sure. Yeah. And that's what's hard because there's worlds and players, I guess. Maybe there wasn't a world. Maybe these guys were always going to progress this way, but there's players that don't progress, right? I'm sure we could go find in your thousands of scouting reports players who have similar notes and didn't end up being good defenders, right? That had the same potential vision on that end of the floor, and then it didn't progress. And I think that's what makes it hard, but that's what would be interesting to pinpoint with these two. Because I have some positive notes in mine as well, like willing to get in a stance and guard, engage and communicate. Some of the same stuff with, like, even with Wells, I said maybe a neutral defender. So it's like it wasn't all negative, but it's like, what was there something in the film that could have said, like, hey, buy into these positives, these negatives are either going to improve or aren't enough to outweigh those positives. I'll be honest, like on a much bigger scale, I was that way with the Thompson twins. I understood the upside of their defensive potential. I did this with Tari Eason as well. I really leaned into their mistakes though. Like when they would just roam around off the ball and turn their back to everything and all of that. And it blinded me to, yeah, but Bryce, if they get rid of some of those bad habits, look at the upside of what they can be on the defensive end. And so maybe those are the things you have to pinpoint a little bit more and see.
Yeah, I think that, trying to figure out, and again, you kind of brought this up a second ago, but like there are so many players where you can point to where it's like, he is, this guy has some chances to be solid on defense, but he's not, right?
Yeah.
Or he has like some sort of issues in some respect where, they stopped him from being useful on defense, and those issues played up in the NBA, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Again, this is where like you really have to understand like the mentality and the toughness and all this stuff, right? Like that's a huge piece of it. And somebody asked like Devin Carter, like I was super high on Devin Carter, coming in. I still am high on Devin. Like I didn't have him in the redraft. I had him at 21 and probably, think I had him too high at number 7 because I'm more worried about where the shot is going than anything. Like the shot continues to get hitchier and hitchier, and I know he had the shoulder injury, but now I'm worried that it's gonna take some time to kind of work through the shoulder injury and some of the problems. But like defensively, that dude's a stud. Like that dude's gonna absolutely reach whatever ceiling he can on defense. I am a huge fan of Devin Carter on that end.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see and that's what I think, all of the things we just did defensively, I think apply to a lot of guys on the offensive end. It's another, you mentioned the shooting with Devin Carter. Like I run circles around, like, or continue to run circles, like, okay, 3-point percentage. Okay, there's one jump. What does that mean? That, it's 30 games. It's a lot of volume, but still, why were these other seasons not there? What's the free throw percentage? How do I buy the mechanics? And then it's like, not to mention the confidence aspect of all of it. So there's a lot of things that go into it, as people know.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm through what I've got. Like, can't draft guys. I kind of mentioned like can't guard. That's a real issue. I think the last thing would just be like, if you're drafting somebody to be a primary creator, like the passing ability just kind of has to be there at the end of the day.
Yes, this is a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. If you think somebody has a chance to be a primary creator, like you have to see flashes of vision. Like this is the Cam Whitmore corollary for me, where like I was really high on Cam because I thought like he is just so physically dominant compared to everybody else. And frankly, like in the NBA, he has been to this point. Like when he gets a chance to play, he just physically really overpowers and overwhelms in transition and has the ability to shoot and everything. But he's not there on defense, and the passing ability is like a real issue still. I thought he showed some flashes with like, just quick rotations and things like that this year, but that's a real problem. Like if you're going to have a guy you're drafting to be potentially a primary creator, has to have like a requisite level of passing ability.
Yeah, as we've done the Cam Thomas thing, but as I've done like the research on that and stuff, this really stood out to me. Like when you look at the top scorers in the NBA, and you look at, assists, but just in general, when you think about who they are, I mean, the top 20 or so are guys that average 5 or more assists when you're looking at 24 or more points a game. I mean, and then even after that, it's Paulo, Franz, Kyrie. Anthony Edwards averages 4.5. KD averages 4. there's only like 4 guys that averaged 24 points or more last year that averaged less than 4 assists. Cam Thomas was one. The other 3 are bigs: Cat, AD, and Victor Wembanyama. So this is something I've thought about as well, is like, if you were going to be the number one option, and especially scoring, like, you got to be able to pass the ball as well. I think the days of just like go score 25 and average 2 assists doesn't seem to be the recipe in the NBA anymore.
No, I don't think it is, and it's why I was a little bit lower on Ace than some people were. So, like, you know, that's a real factor for me. Do you have any other ones? Do you want to talk about anybody like specific, like players that have changed your tools?
The only other thing that like I kind of had was like, and I don't even know if this is true because I don't know if other teams would have taken them. Like my topic was like, it only takes one team to fall in love with a player. So it was like the Young Hansen pick, but
sure.
Maybe they had intel that he was going, like, I may be speaking out of turn here because like I thought of Young Hansen. I thought of Rob Dillingham, but maybe other teams were going to take Rob Dillingham in the next few picks.
I think he goes somewhere in the lottery. I don't know if he goes.
So he's probably not a good example.
Yeah. Like Young, like I'm not sure Young goes in the first round if Portland doesn't take him there. Maybe one of those Brooklyn picks, but like real questions from what I understand.
And so I think that one maybe was still more with me because like even Jaeger went way higher than I thought, but Jaeger probably still goes lottery even if Brooklyn doesn't take him.
Yeah. I'm not convinced of that, but you know, possible. Like here's the thing, like all of these guys that are lead initiators where some people see the vision and other people don't, they're just always going to be very polarizing.
Sure.
Until they figure it out. Right. So like Jaeger's a prime example of this. Dillingham's a prime example of this. You know, I guess Collier to some extent, like these guys that basically have to play on ball. I guess Jaeger is big enough to not play on the ball and he's trying to like work through the rest of his game to where he doesn't, but I didn't love the defense or shooting enough to be able to like get there to where he can be an off-ball player. Maybe I'll be proven wrong on that. Happy to be proven wrong if that ends up being the case. But I think that the key there is that you're either going to buy into somebody being an on-ball player in the NBA or you're not going to buy into that.
Yeah.
And if you don't buy into it, you're probably going to be like drastically lower on that guy than most people are.
And I think where this probably just piggybacks off your every team has their own big board that we already mentioned earlier. And I think that's kind of what I'm saying here as well. Just, you know, kind of got there in a different path than you did. But I think it's the same idea.
Yep. Okay. Anything else any other players you wanted to talk about specifically?
No, that's kind of how I went through it, was just looking at ones that maybe had perplexed me or I was way off one way or the other. So,
yeah, I think that, you know, maybe like one thing for me would be like strength. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, but I've always been on that. Like that's not new for me in the last 2 drafts. Like to me, like strength is a really like under discussed marginal advantage. Like you have to be strong in the NBA, and guys that are super strong, I think, can make it work in a way where guys that are super skinny are typically going to struggle, right?
Yeah.
You know, Tari Eason's kind of a prime example of this. Like Tari Eason is just like a physical like beast. Like that dude is gonna go and like play with a crazy high motor, and he's gonna move guys around. Terrence Shannon is a good example of this too. Terrence Shannon is really strong and like explosive and powerful for a guard, and like he's gonna be a rotation player because he's that big and that strong. Someone asked I was high on Dylan Jones. I was probably lower on Dylan Jones than anybody else in the public sphere, if you made me bet. I had Dylan Jones like 65 or something. I just thought the athletic tools were far too deficient to be able to make it work in the NBA. I mean, I'm trying to think like.
Hopefully Sam will be back, but I didn't have any other players. Like I said, that's kind of how I went through it, was player by player. So, he is back. Sam, did you join us?
I'm back. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I accidentally hit the back button on my computer.
Very
So
good.
yeah, it was tough. Yeah, look, like it's the thing that I guess I would emphasize here is, again, so much of this is an art, not a science. And guys that work in some situations just like aren't going to work in other situations.
Yeah.
And like, again, like I did a redraft today. The guys that I have ranked from 3 to 11. So Jared McCain, Reed Shepard, Donovan Clingan, Modest and Ron Holland, Zach Eady, Kalel Ware, Jalen Wells, Alex Sarr. If you rank those guys in any order right now, I'm cool with it. Based on what you need, based on what your team needs, based on what you feel like the upside is. Those guys are all wildly disparate. Like those guys are all like, in terms of, some of them are upside swings, some of them have proven some things, some of them have not been very effective NBA players yet. Like, however you want to, kind of stack and file those guys, I am good with it. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. There is a case for any of those things. There is a case for any argument you want to make, honestly. And if you want to have Jared McCain, someone says here McCain should be number 1, and I will die on that hill. If you wanted to have McCain number 1, I get it. I completely get it. Like, that guy can really score, and his feel and ball screens was way improved this year, and like he might have real like juice in that regard. I'd probably take Castle and Ricochet ahead of him, but if you wanna take that, I get it. Someone says Buzelis at 1. If you believe in the on-ball stuff coming together, I think he wants to be great. So like I get that case too. I'm not a big believer in the on-ball stuff. I think he has pretty high hips, and I don't really think he can handle in half-court settings tightly enough to be able to create. But if you're a buyer in that skill set, that's the swing skill. You know what I mean? And I get it. So like if I don't buy into that skill set, I see more of like a role player and like a rotational guy. And, that's cool. Like, the difference between me thinking Jalen Wells is going to be like a difference maker 3-and-D, or like Josh Richardson, who we talked about on the redraft in 2015 that we did earlier this week. It's so small. Like, it's negligible. You know what I mean? Like, looking at the 2015 redraft we did. So let me see if I can pull up where I had guys ranked. So not a great example because there aren't many actual 3-and-D wings in that class. But somebody like Aaron Naismith and Josh Richardson, the difference is like very small. I would argue Naismith has probably peaked higher than Josh Richardson ever did, frankly, just because of the shooting. And I think he's like, I don't know, Josh was pretty good when he was younger on defense, but Naismith was just like the starting wing on a title, or a finalist for the title, and can really shoot it in a way that Josh never really shot it at volume in the way you wanted him to. But like, the difference between those guys is negligible, right? Yeah. And like, I have spoiler alert from when we do the 2020 redraft, whenever I'm out on vacation, so that'll be like early September, late August. Like, I have Aaron Naismith quite high on my redraft board. Like, I'll just spoil this now. Like, I have Aaron Naismith ahead of Devin Vassell, and that's something that might cause consternation for people, but I'm just like, I don't know. I think it's pretty close. So like, I say all this to say that with these younger players that are, still developing and everything, it really comes down to believing in one skill set. And like, that swing skill set will change the trajectory of their careers one way or another. Like, Modest will be anywhere from like 1 to 11 probably in a redraft. You know what I mean? Like, there's probably a lower end outcome for me where he's number 1, but if he doesn't develop like any ball skills and doesn't get disruptive on defense, like, he might end up closer to 11, right? Like, there's just so many swing skills that we're trying to figure out with these guys that change the trajectories of their career so drastically that, you're just trying to like slot and place these guys if you can.
No, that's what I'm quite high on Aaron Neesmith as well. So, and the other thing is, I mean, even just doing the one from 10 years ago and 5 years ago, you realize the separation for some players isn't like there just hasn't been as much of a career. And so, especially when you're doing 2024, you're still so much uncertainty with what guys are. And that draft is just so unique in general because of what it was. So,
yeah. So, all right, Bryce, I think that's all we got today. Have you watched anything fun recently?
No. School started.
My wife and
I don't have time.
Yeah,
now.
you're in a tough spot. My wife and I started Alien Earth last night. We watched the first episode. That was really good. First episode was actually quite good in a way that I was happy with as somebody who like loves the first two Alien movies.
Okay.
Trying to think, what else have we watched recently? We watched I don't know. Like I can look at Letterboxd, but we watched I think I mentioned we watched K-pop Demon Hunters over the weekend.
Yeah.
That was very fun. That movie was actually like just quite enjoyable. Weapons. We mentioned Weapons. At some point, Andrew and I will talk about Weapons. We want to wait until like more people have seen it, but that's a fun ass movie, man. that was a fun ass movie to watch. I think that's kind of all we got here, Bryce.
Have you watched Happy Gilmore 2? I feel like that's the only like new movie that has come out that I know. I haven't seen it yet for what it's worth, but
I have watched Happy Gilmore 2.
Okay.
It's not a good movie. Like the first movie I will go to bat for and will say it is a genuinely good, well-structured movie that is completely insane and, is actually like just genuinely hilarious, right?
Yep.
And I love it. The second movie is like not good and like I don't even know that it's well structured, but I laughed. Like there are pieces of it that are very funny, I thought.
Okay. I can get that.
Yeah, like I'm here for it. But like it's also, I think that if your wife is like into any of the like PGA Tour stuff and the like dynamics of the PGA Tour, she will laugh at it.
No, I'm a little nervous that because I've heard a lot about the cameos and stuff or people that just have roles, whatever it is, and I think she will like it more than me because I think she watched is there a golf like where they followed around the golfers and their wives and their lives and stuff?
Yeah.
Kind of like quarterback and the different things other sports have done.
Yeah, full swing.
Yeah, she's watched all of that, so I think she knows the ins and outs and like who likes who and who doesn't, and those little nuances that sound like maybe you need to know. But
yeah, like I will say that. Do you know who Scotty Scheffler is?
I know his name. Like I couldn't pick him out of a lineup, but yes,
like best golfer in the world.
Is he the one that got arrested going to the?
He's the one that got arrested.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Like by far the best golfer in the world. Like it's hysterical how dominant he is. Like Data Golf had him. Like I mean, I'll tell you what he is on Data Golf right now. He's currently in third place at the BMW Championship, and he is 4 strokes behind the leader Robert McIntyre, who closed fucking crazy well today on the back 9. Like even though he's 4 strokes behind in the first round here, at the end of the first round, he is still a 33% chance to win the tournament. And he is 12% higher than Robert McIntyre because he is still like, he's just so dominant as a player that like, that is the expectation is like either Pac will come back to him or he will just keep making birdies and like will dominate. So yeah, he is, Scotty Scheffler is the best golfer in the world. He is the funniest part of Happy Gilmore 2 as well.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. To get back to where we originally started. So, all right, Bryce, that's all we got here. So, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on with you.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky. I have the Substack. As I mentioned, I have a Javonte Green. If you're a Javonte Green fan, the Pistons signed him, so I did a video breakdown there. Pistons Pulse podcast. Again, don't usually promote it too hard, but I am bringing on my former Division I basketball coach, Jeff Jones, who coached me at American. He played at Virginia, coached at Virginia recently, most recently at Old Dominion, now retired. I'm bringing him on the podcast, just him and I. We're going to just talk it up, talk about his playing career. He played against like Michael Jordan when he was in college, stuff like that. Played with Ralph Sampson. And that is Tuesday at 8 Eastern, I think. So if you want to check that out, I think that'll be a fun episode. Otherwise, right here, Game Theory Podcast with the Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. We have that redraft coming up. I'm like already kind of starting to dig into 2026 draft guide stuff because I am a savage, if nothing else. So we will have stuff up on The Athletic at some point. I'm going on vacation at some point here in a week and a half. So I don't know if I'll have anything go live on The Athletic before then, just because I'm kind of trying to get a few things in order before we leave for the draft guide. Trying to think of anything else right now. I mean, Bryce and I will be back on Sunday. We're recording podcasts for while I'm out. So we will have a few things go up while I am out, which will be good. Yeah, that's where we're at. One thing I'm realizing is we forgot to shout out a sponsor today. We got to shout out our folks and friends over at Square. I'll have Andrew move this up in the actual audio as well. But shout out to our friends over at Square. Read this ad real quick. Support for today's episode comes from Square, your all-in-one business partner, making your day-to-day easier. From point-of-sale systems and payments to inventory and customer tools, Square brings everything together in one simple platform so you can stay organized, sell anywhere, and keep things moving. Whether you're running a cafe, salon, boutique, or something entirely your own, Square gives you the flexibility to grow at your own pace and even set up an online store in just a few clicks. Here in Melbourne, it's Cafe Town. Just about every single cafe I go to seems to use Square in order to get its business done. It's incredibly easy to just tap your card and keep it moving, making any sale painless and simple. Square is easy to use. It's flexible for any kind of business, be it a farmer's market, like some of the beautiful ones that I'll find here, or a pop-up art gallery. Square adjusts to what you need as a business. You can sell in person or online from one location or several. It allows all major credit cards or payment methods, including Apple Pay. So checkout is fast and easy. Square keeps up so you don't have to slow down. Get everything you need to run and grow your business without any long-term commitments. And why wait? Right now, you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/game theory. That's SQUARE.com/GO/game theory, GAMETHEORY. Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today. Okay, Bryce, let's get out on that note. Until next time, we'll talk soon.